What's up, everybody? Luke Film Boss here, and today I am doing a special 2023 box office prediction video. Now, before I begin, I just have to mention the big doll in the room, Megan. Nobody expected, myself included, that Megan would be this big. Like, the industry was expecting that Megan would do well because the buzz and the trailers were actually doing pretty good. Like, there was a lot of hype surrounding this film that it was definitely going to be a new Blumhouse, like, successful film. Like, at first I was like, I feel like this might not do well. Like, I don't know how people are going to take to the silliness of this dancing doll, but it really got people interested. And I was surprised when I went to see it. There was actually a decent crowd there. And, like, for Puss in Boots, when I went to see it opening week, there was, like, nobody in the theater. It was me and my one friend. We were the only ones there. Megan, there was quite a few people there. So I was like, wow, Megan is doing well. And then, like, the expectations for Megan were, like, 17 to, like, a high end of 25 million. And then when its previews came out, they're like, the industry's like, okay, 26 million. And then when the Friday numbers came out, they're like, okay, between 27 and 28 million. And then the estimates came out today on Sunday, and they were at above 30 million, topping last year's opening weekend for Scream, which makes it, besides Nope, which was a Jordan Peele film, which typically do really well, it is the highest grossing horror film since the pandemic started in its opening weekend. And I think that's going to have really strong legs, especially with those reviews and with how much people are just taking to this film so well. I had an initial prediction myself of 20 million opening to 60 million total domestic box office. It's definitely going over 100 million. I don't even care. It opened this strong the weekend before Martin Luther King Jr. Day, or whatever it is. Next week is probably going to have a really good hold, and it has no competition until Quantumania comes out on President's Day weekend. Megan is a huge hit. So I'm just going to run through January, which is pretty small. First, we have Plane, which I think is going to make probably anywhere between 40 to 50 million domestic. Worldwide, with these smaller films, I'm not going to really go into those. Man Called Otto, I originally predicted a 15 million opening and a 50 million domestic, but that theater average this past weekend, as it was in limited release in like 600 and some theaters, it actually was pretty good. Like, I did the numbers, and had it opened like in 4,000 theaters with the same theater average, it would have opened to about 26 million. So my prediction here could be wrong. I'm going to stick to when it opens wide officially. I think it's next weekend. I'm going to stick to like 15 million, maybe 20 million opening weekend. And it could have really good legs, like The Upside that came out a few years back with Kevin Hart. So A Man Called Otto could end up doing pretty well. And then at the end of January, we have Missing. I don't see a lot of potential for this. It's from the same people that did Searching. I think Searching was the other film by these people. That film didn't do amazing, but I think that this could be a smallish hit. I'm sure it didn't cost a lot to make. All right, getting into February predictions. First off, we have Knock at the Cabin. I predicted that this film would open to about 10 million and total around 40 million. Like, I didn't see like a lot of potential for this. And then there was trailers for it. I had already seen the trailer, but then trailers showed for it in front of Megan, and I'm like, it reminded me that this is an M. Night Shyamalan film, and the last film, Old, made 48 million during the, like, it was just as theaters were starting to recover a little bit back in summer of 2021, and that film made almost 50 million. So I think Knock at the Cabin, despite the fact that it is R-rated and it's not a summer release, I think that it actually could exceed 50 million. And if it's really good, maybe even more than that. So I'm not sure about this one, but I think there actually is potential for it now. Next, over President's Day weekend, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. I have pretty high expectations for this. I don't think it's going to perform anywhere near the other Ant-Man films. Now, when I'm doing these predictions, at least with Marvel, I'm taking into consideration that these films probably won't have China, so take into account that. But opening weekend, I predict it's going to open with a really solid 130 million, and domestically, it's going to gross 370. That's my prediction. That would put it in line with the Batman domestically. And internationally, I actually think that this might be going a little bit like wild with the Ant-Man predictions, especially considering China is not included. I actually think this is going to be a big film, like not quite Doctor Strange levels, but it's going to be just under that. I'm predicting a 500 million international total, which would put it ahead of Thor: Love and Thunder and Wakanda Forever. But worldwide, I'm predicting Ant-Man makes 870 million. Let's see if I'm right. I just think that because of how much importance like the trailers are putting on this film, like with Kang showing up and the quantum realm like looking just amazing, like I think that this film has big potential, especially since there's almost nothing coming out from now till then. I think that this is going to have a big opening because pretty much all the other box office, Avatar, Puss in Boots, Megan, are all pretty much going to be fizzled out by that point. And so Quantumania is going to blow in here. And pretty much it's the only big thing that comes out till March. So I think it's going to do really well. Next in February, we have the Jesus Revolution. I think it could be a pretty solid Christian faith-based film. Right now, I'm going with a 25 million domestic total. Not huge, but for a Christian film, it's not bad. Then we have Cocaine Bear. I actually think this film is going to do decent numbers, considering how strange the concept is. Prediction right now, 20 million opening, 65 million domestic total. Once again, Megan exceeded expectations, so maybe Cocaine Bear can do the same. I don't know. Next, we have the month of March, which is a month full of potential. The same way April was full of potential huge hits last year, this month, March, is so much bigger than even that. Because last year, April had so much potential. You had Morbius, you had Sonic the Hedgehog 2, you had Fantastic Beasts, The Secrets of Dumbledore, and then you had The Bad Guys, all of which helped make April a pretty solid month, but Fantastic Beasts and Morbius both fell below the 50 million minimum that I think they needed to kind of save face in opening weekend, and then they had really bad legs. But then you had like the really big surprise hit, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and The Bad Guys did pretty well. This year with March, it's that same lineup where almost every film has potential to make over 50 million in opening weekend. This year, I think it's a little bit stronger, though. We have Creed 3, which the Creed films have, like, there's only been 2 of them, but the second one made slightly more than the first, and I think that this third one is definitely going to be the biggest of them all. Then we have Scream 6. I almost forgot about Scream 6. I think that this is actually going to be a solid film. I think it could end up grossing slightly below the first, but I think that it probably, I don't know, I feel like, what is it? I believe it's Paramount that released Scream. I think that they took time, whereas Universal kind of didn't do it too well with the Halloween films. I feel like Scream is going to endure, and it's going to be a good film, which is going to help it at the box office. Right now, my predictions is 25 million opening and 70 million domestic total. Shazam! Fury of the Gods comes out in the middle of March, another big hit. Recently, we had Black Adam, which opened to 67 million. Like, I don't care what you say, because its budget was super big. Like, honestly, Black Adam is a very, like, nobody knows or cares about Black Adam until Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson played him, and he got that film to open to a very solid number, and it had a performance that's very similar to the Marvel origin films. The only difference, it has a much bigger budget because The Rock was involved. So I think that Shazam! Fury of the Gods will perform at least on the lowest end. Domestically, it will perform like Black Adam, and it will make slightly more internationally. I think just because the market is starting to get stronger. So overall, I think my personal belief is that Fury of the Gods will actually do really well. I hope that I'm not just overhyping it, especially with the new news happening with DC. But right now I'm predicting an $82 million opening, a $225 million domestic total, and worldwide I think that it will make about $280 million, which will just put it over $500 million at the worldwide box office, which is enough to say that yes, it's a success, and compared to the first film, would make it a breakout sequel. 65 it's the Dino film that is coming out, I think around the same time, the same week as Shazam 2. I see potential for this film. I don't think that it's going to do amazing, but I'm predicting a $30 million opening and a $25 million domestic total. International, I think it could do pretty well. I mean, the dinosaurs do tend to bring in the crowd, so I'm going to stay a little conservative and say 200 million international for just below 300 million worldwide, which wouldn't be terrible. Like, it wouldn't be a huge success, but it would be a mild, like, mid success. And then March, dang, there's so much in March. Like, this isn't even the last full, like, weekend. March 24th, John Wick Chapter 4 comes out. I think it's going to do better than the original. So far, there's been 3 films, and each film has, like, pretty much doubled domestically and almost worldwide what the previous film did. I don't think that's going to be the case here, not by a long shot, but I do think that it's going to outgross the third film. So 70 million opening is my prediction, 220 domestic total, 230 million international, which would make for a 450 million worldwide, putting it well ahead of the third film. And I think that it's going to do it, because this franchise just continues to grow, and it, like, people are continuing to like these films, so they're going to come back, and then the audience just grows. I think it's going to be big. And then the very end of March, it's kind of like in March and kind of trickles over into April, we have Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Amongst Thieves. I think that this could actually be a decent success. It's also a big, like, risk. Like, it seems kind of like Warcraft, where it's the kind of film that's going to get saved worldwide, like, by China, but isn't actually going to make a profit. But I also think that this could actually be a solid hit, because the trailer actually looks pretty good. I think people are getting more excited for this than you might think. It's not going to be huge, but I feel like the international box office could save it, and its domestic numbers will be decent. So I'm predicting 45 million domestic opening, 120 million domestic total. Internationally, I think it might be able to reach 350 million, which would put it at 470 million on the worldwide chart. Now here we are at April, which is a pretty dormant month. There's not much coming out, but there is one big thing coming out at the beginning of this month that will be able to play out through the entire month, which could make this a really big month, because this film, quite frankly, I think has potential to be the biggest hit of the year. I'm not quite going to put it at that level, but it's very close. The Super Mario Bros. Movie is probably going to be a cash grab for Universal. They have they rarely fail. Their Despicable Me franchise is animation's powerhouse right now. The Minions: The Rise of Gru, albeit the ticket prices are higher than they used to be, but it became Universal's #1 domestic grosser at the box office, and it made over $900 million worldwide. Once again, the market is continuing to strengthen. I think that this Super Mario Bros., considering the Illumination brand, their lowest grossing film, besides Hop, is The Secret Life of Pets 2, which was, quite frankly, not a very good film, and still made profit. The first Secret Life of Pets was huge. Like, if they can get that movie about pets to be as big as it was, they can definitely get an IP like Mario to become one of the biggest animated films of all time. Quite frankly, I think it's going to be. I'm predicting a 120 million opening, a 420 million domestic total, becoming Universal's Illumination's new #1 domestic grosser. And worldwide, I think it's going to cross the $1 billion mark. I think it could do much better internationally. I'm kind of lowballing it here, especially considering I feel like Japan could be huge for this. I'm going to predict a 650 million international cume, which would beat out the recent Minions Rise of Gru, putting this film at 1,070,000,000 worldwide. I think it will be the first $1 billion hit of the year. Quite frankly, this movie I feel like will be huge. That brings us to May, which starts off with what I think is probably going to be the number one film, at least domestically, of the year. I think I'm being very generous with how much I think it's going to make worldwide, but I was with Quantumania as well. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I'm predicting it's going to top the second film. 160 million domestic opening, 432 million domestic total. I just wanted to give it like a strange number, like 32. Who puts a 32 at the end of a prediction? But yeah, I think that it's going to be the number one domestic earner. Worldwide, I think it's going to have 600 million international, which would be about 100 million more than the last Guardians film made. And that film had 100 million from China, which I don't think this film would have the benefit of having. But I do think that this is going to be a big step for the MCU in its Phase 5 and its conclusion of the Guardians storyline. So worldwide, 1,032,000,000. I think Guardians 3 will be pretty big. Then we have the Book Club 2. I'm just going to say it's probably going to make about 50 million domestic. Fast X. The Fast and Furious franchise is formidable. It's hard to beat. And like Fast 9 came out, it was like the first real blockbuster of the pandemic era. I guess you could say Quiet Place 2 technically was, but Fast X was the first film, F9. F9 was the first film to really make a big splash on its opening weekend, and it still wasn't that big, but it outgrossed Hobbs and Shaw's opening weekend, which was a big deal. I think Fast X, due to how much, like, you can definitely tell that blockbusters and the overall movie-going atmosphere has strengthened from 2021 to 2022, and I think 2023 is going to continue that. So I think Fast X is definitely going to do well. I'm predicting right now 100 million opening, which would be really crazy. 260 million domestic total, 750 million internationally, which would be more than F9's worldwide. But I think it's going to do that. I think China is going to be bigger this time around for it, which would put it over just over $1 billion worldwide. And then May ends out with the Little Mermaids live action reimagining over Memorial Day. So this usually is a good spot for movies in general, and it's proved to be really good for Aladdin and Maleficent. So I think that it's going to work out for Little Mermaid here. Predicting 80 million opening weekend domestically, 310 million domestic total, and 560 million international for an 870 million worldwide total. I think that it's going to do well, but I'm not quite sold on the fact that it might make it into the $1 billion club. The original Little Mermaid was the film that kicked off the Disney Renaissance, but it was also one of the lowest grossing films in the Disney Renaissance. I know that it's an enduring classic. Quite frankly, just due to the way the film industry is right now, I think it's going to be big, but I don't think it's going to be on Aladdin or Beauty and the Beast live action level. Then we have June, which is a pretty big month. It usually is. Like this past year, June was a really big year. And it's going to be the same here this year for 2023. It starts off with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I might be overselling this one, but I think this is going to be huge, at least here in the United States, at least by comparison to the original. I'm predicting that this is going to open to over 100 million, not too much over, let's say 105 million. I think that it's going to make around what the average Spider-Man movie makes, so about 337 is what I'm going. 337 million domestic, 408 million international, for 745 million worldwide total for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. That would be a very solid performance. The original film only made 190 million domestically and 385-ish worldwide, which was a good number, especially considering it wasn't super expensive. But this film, I definitely think, is going to bring it to a blockbuster level, whereas the first film was just a solid film for Sony Animations. I think this film will solidify it as one of the major playing blockbuster franchises. Then next up in June, we have Transformers Rise of the Beast. Now, the Transformers franchise used to be one of the biggest things since sliced bread. And then with Age of Extinction, like, it was still huge, but you could see it was starting to dwindle in the domestic market. And then in 2017, with The Last Knight, it just tanked like so hard. It made like about half, both domestically and worldwide, of what the last Transformers film made. It was really embarrassing for the studio. And then they came out with Bumblebee, which was still the lowest grossing film in the franchise, but considering it was kind of like a new starting point, it was, and the fact that it was a smaller film compared to the other huge Transformers films, Bumblebee did well enough to solidify that there was still a chance for this franchise. With Rise of the Beast, I think that it's going to have a huge uptick on the worldwide charts. Domestically, I'm not sold that it's going to be a huge blockbuster, but I think that it will make significantly more than the last two installments. I don't think it's going to quite bring the Transformers films up to the level that it used to be. I don't even think it will be able to match Age of Extinction, not even close. But then again, part of me says that trailer was really good, and the reactions to that trailer were really good. Like, there's people that I know who haven't even watched Transformers movies, and they're excited for this. So it could do much better than I'm predicting. But right now, I'm going to say 64 million opening weekend, 166 million domestic total, 613 million internationally, for 779 million worldwide total for Transformers. Next up, we have The Flash. Quite frankly, I think that this might be a better movie than most people make it out to be, just because it's had such troubled production of just getting it out, because it's been delayed so many times. I think it might actually end up being a really good movie. And The Flash and DC, not to mention there's two Batmans in this film, I think that this film has almost no way of being an absolute flop. I don't think that it's going to be the billion-dollar hit that I think it definitely was supposed to be, but I think it's going to do very well. And I know that there's kind of like been so much trouble with Ezra Miller and so much drama with him, but I feel like it's all going to be blown over by the time this film actually gets released. And I feel like they could actually do some decent press. Like, apparently Warner Brothers wants to keep him as the Flash for some reason, even though they might reportedly be rebooting the whole universe, and yet somehow they want to keep Ezra Miller as the Flash rather than recasting him. Means that I don't think that he's in as much deep water as people make it out. So I think this film will be fine. It might not be huge, but it will do well. So I'm predicting 110 million opening weekend, 270 million domestic total, 485 million internationally. I just think that this will do well overseas, and I think that it will get a China release date, which should add at least a little bit to its total, which will bring it to about 755 million worldwide. Once again, not huge, but it makes it a decent hit for Warner Brothers. Next, to end out the month of June, we have Indiana Jones 5, The Dial of Destiny. I don't think it's going to flop, but I don't think it's going to do incredible. And yet somehow, I feel like it's going to be the highest grossing film worldwide. I just feel it. Despite whether or not it's actually a good film or not, I just think it's going to be a worldwide success. I think domestically it's going to fall short of the previous film, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but I think worldwide it will do very well. So I'm predicting 95 million opening, $282 million domestic total, 557 million internationally, for a worldwide that's above 800 million. About 840 million is where I see this one. Next up, we have the month of July, which starts off with Insidious 5. I don't really care about Insidious. They do pretty well at the box office, so I'm saying it's probably going to do decent. 20 million opening, 60 million total. Who cares? Then we have Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. I feel like this is going to be the Mission Impossible film that is going to put this franchise into the $1 billion club. I watched a box office prediction with Grace Randall. She doesn't think that it can do it, but I think that it can, especially off the hype of Top Gun Maverick doing so well. The fact that the last Mission Impossible film made $100 million more than the next highest grossing film in the franchise, or at least around $100 million. I feel like this is going to be big. And if this film can't get it to the $1 billion point, I think that the part 2 definitely will. So Dead Reckoning Part 1, I think, will open to about 87 million, which seems like a big number. I think it's going to have pretty good legs. I think it's going to make it just above 300 million. And I think over 700 million internationally, quite frankly. I might be overselling it once again, like I've been doing with some of these films, but I think it might get there. So total, that would put this film at over $1 billion worldwide. That's my prediction. Barbie, I feel like this one could flop super hard, but I also feel like Warner Brothers is going to do this film well enough and market it well enough that the Barbie brand is going to get at least some people here, just because of interest factor. Maybe people won't even think that this is a good movie, but I mean, it will be the second movie based on a doll to come out this year, and it could be just as successful. So I'm predicting, might be a little bit high, but predicting 43 million opening, 141 million domestic total, over 200 million internationally, to get it around 350 million worldwide, which would be really good for this film. And then we have Oppenheimer, which I think will be quite a big film. Oppenheimer, I'm predicting 60 million opening domestically. Domestic total probably around 240 million. Internationally, I think this will do really well. Around 450, give or take, to put it around 685 million worldwide. Then we have The Marvels, which is ending out July and bringing us into August. I don't think it's going to be a flop, but I think this could really be a very low performer for Marvel. I think it could be the lowest performing Marvel film this year. I'm going to say it opens just under 100 million with 98 million. Makes about 262 million domestically, 432 internationally, for a worldwide total of 694 million. It's not going to flop. It's Marvel, and it's coming off of the first Captain Marvel, which I think the numbers were kind of inflated due to the fact that Endgame came out less than 2 months after its release. But I do think the sequel will do well enough. It's got such a big cast, and the Marvel brand is so strong that I don't see this film doing too terribly. Then we have the month of August. We have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, Mutant Mayhem. I think it will open with around 30 million, make close to 100 million domestic. I'm not sure about worldwide. Let's just say 250. I'm not putting high hopes on this, but then again, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that live action film that came out in 2014, did really well. But then the sequel in 2016 did terrible. So I'm not quite sure how this new animated film is going to work out for Paramount. But it could be pretty big, or it could be a flop. Then we have The Meg 2. I don't think it's going to make as much as the first one. That first film was actually very successful. I do think The Meg 2 will make over 100 million domestically and over 400 million worldwide, with a big assist from China, of course. But overall, I think The Meg will do decent numbers. We have Haunted Mansion. I'm predicting just over 100 million domestic, just slightly under 300 million worldwide. We have Blue Beetle, a film that I think could make 500 million worldwide, but also could make much, much less. Like, I'm being really, really generous with my prediction here, but it's coming out so much further, closer to the end of the year, when there's not going to be much. Like, this is going to be the last blockbuster of the summer. Well, it's coming out the end of August, so it's around summer, but yeah, it's like the end of summer, like right before the Labor Day weekend. So I feel like it could do well. I'm predicting 71 million opening, 200 million domestic, 300 million international, and it's going to make around 500 million worldwide. Once again, I also feel like this could be like a Shazam performer where it makes about 350 million worldwide. But I have a feeling like this could be a decent size hit. And if it is a big success, I feel like if they played their cards right in the filming of it, it could be the launcher for the new DC universe. Like, if it doesn't have like really any connection to the current DC universe and they decide to reboot, I feel like they could keep this character if this film does really well. Then we have The Equalizer 3. I don't think it's going to do like very well. The other films I think made over 100 million domestic. I'm going more like 70 million for this third one. The Nun 2. First film did well. I'll predict that this one does well enough. Makes over 300 million worldwide, 100 million domestic. The Nun will be fine. So that gets us to October. Like, that got us through September already. Let's go to October. The only big thing that I could find in October, maybe it will change, maybe some of the release dates will shift, or maybe they'll add something, like the studios will decide to add something in this very dormant October release schedule. We have Kraven the Hunter. Quite frankly, I think that this film will flop similarly to how Morbius flopped. Quite frankly, I think it will do slightly better. I'm predicting like 44 million opening, 90 million domestic total, 200 million worldwide. It's not going to be big. It's going to be really small, I feel like. But then again, if the whole month just remains this small, it like literally will be the only thing out. And it could actually end up being a decent, small, like sneaky little hit in that month because nothing else wanted to challenge it. Whereas Morbius had more competition, this film could actually get some decent numbers just due to default. Then November kicks off. This holiday season is not going to be amazing, but there is some films I'm really looking forward to, and I think that November could be really big. Dune 2, I think, is going to be really big. The first film was kind of cut short, very much so by not only the pandemic, but also the day and date Warner Bros. Release. And yet somehow Dune 2, or the first Dune, still managed to open above 40 million and make over 100 million domestic and made over 400 million worldwide, which was about where most of the bigger Hollywood films of 2021 were landing. Like, most of the Marvel films, Sing 2, like, that's where they kind of land. So I'm really looking forward to see how well Dune 2 does, because I think it could be a breakout sequel. I think it could be one of the biggest hits of the year. Prediction, 92 million opening, 294 million domestic total, 528 million international, for 822 million worldwide total for Dune 2. I think this could be one of the next big franchises. It has the potential. The first film did very well despite the fact of all the limitations. This film could be like one of the biggest breakout hits ever seen in recent memory. Then we have November 17th with Trolls 3. The Trolls franchise just does well for some reason. Like, the sequel did well with its video sales, its digital sales, and definitely made enough money for Universal for them to greenlight the third one. I think it will make over 100 million domestic and over 300 million worldwide. Nothing huge, but enough to be a good counter-programmer and enough to make profit. Hunger Games ends out the month of November. I'm predicting a 95 million opening. I don't think it's going to be as big as the other Hunger Games films. I just think it's going to fall short. I think it will make about 260 million domestic, 420 million international, for 680 million worldwide. So, Hunger Games, I'm looking forward to it, but I feel like it might fall into that Fantastic Beasts kind of pitfall where it starts off well and then kind of deteriorates. But this first film in the prequels, I think, should do well. And then we have the month of December, which has Wonka. I think it could do really well. I think it's going to perform similarly to the Tim Burton film, but with inflation. So we have 40 million opening. I think it's going to have really strong legs. 235 million domestic prediction. Internationally, I think it will do better than the Tim Burton film. So 360 million internationally for a worldwide of about 595 million. Give or take, maybe it gets past 600 million. That's my prediction. And then we have Aquaman 2, Aquaman the Lost Kingdom. Call me crazy, I think it's going to make about as much, if not more, than the first film. Like, I don't know, like, it's a really tough situation, but this is apparently going to be the last film in this DC universe. And while some people think that that's a reason that this movie will probably fail because it's not leading up to anything, it's like, or maybe they're going to just go to see it because it's the ending chapter of this franchise. I feel like because they pushed it so far back, they have to do some kind of reshoot that makes it somewhat conclude the whole DCEU to this point in a satisfactory manner. Like, I feel like that they've been doing reshoots. I feel like they're going to do something interesting with this film that's going to make it draw in the crowds a little bit more than just, oh, it's a DC film, it's a good DC film, come see it. I feel like it's going to be a big hit. Quite frankly, I'm surprised. I have this film as the #1 worldwide release of 2023. I'm predicting 80 million opening, 350 million domestic would just put it above the first film. Once you add in inflation, it might be a little bit less in terms of actual ticket sales. Internationally, I don't think it will do as well as the first film. I think China will be slightly lower, but still be big. Prediction is 750-ish million internationally for an overall 1.1 billion worldwide, which would make it the #1 worldwide movie of 2023, which is kind of crazy. Once again, these are just speculation. They could be much lower and much higher than my prediction, but overall, that is what I predict. There's a new Ghostbuster movie coming out, 100 million domestic. These movies do okay worldwide, 200 million. Like, the last one didn't do well worldwide. Overall, that's my list. That was a head full of information. Thank you all for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm glad I got this list done. Can't wait to see how these movies perform as the year unfolds. I'm probably going to be doing videos talking about the box office, and just can't wait to see how the year unfolds. Thank you all for watching. Bye.